Uh, Hello everyone, it's lovely to be in the center of the stage now, and it's good to see you all. Thank you for coming for my talk. And one habit that I try to carry on in all my talks is to make it as interactive as possible. It's a nicer way of saying I ask questions. So if you have any answers, if you have any opinions, feel free to answer those questions or just give your opinions. Though it's a little dark out there, I think I can manage to see who is raising the hand. So let's try it that way. And one more thing that I usually do is start my talk with a simple puzzle so you folks can get used to my tone and my speed of talking, and I get comfortable on the stage here, feel warmer and all. So let's start with a simple puzzle maybe. What is the one thing that has holes but can hold water? Sorry? Yay, that's a simple one, right? Let's notch it up a little bit. What do you call the security outside Samsung Galaxy store? That's a good one, right? That's definitely a good one. Think about it. What do you call the security outside a Samsung Galaxy store? Guesses? Come on, you're smart people. You can figure it out. Right, think about it. I'll definitely give you the answer at the end of my talk. Starting with the talk. So the topic today is automating the responsive website. So a little bit of introduction about me before we delve deep into the topic. My name is Pranathi Birudugadda. Whosoever manages to pronounce my second name will definitely deserve a chocolate from me. So try it if you see me outside. Catch me and try saying my full name to me. And I work as a quality analyst at ThoughtWorks. I usually describe myself as quality enthusiast because that sounds cooler. And yeah, I'm an agile practitioner and an occasional blogger. I don't write a lot of posts, but when I do, I make sure to put all my experiences on all my learnings in those blog posts. And these are the handles that you can follow me on. And I'm from India, as you can say from my accent, obviously. And yeah, I work at ThoughtWorks Technologies. So that's about me. And let's start about the talk, right? That's what you're here for. So what is a responsive website? I'm sure most of you would have attended Adam's talk in the morning about Applitools. Adam still is sitting in the back. Hey, Adam. So yeah, what is responsive website? I would like to hear from the audience. Just shoot. Come on. Responsive website is response. How many of you seen the Selenium conference website? How many of you seen the Selenium conference website? How many of you have used it in the mobile? No? Oh my God, Selenium conference website is a responsive website. So when you say responsive website, it's a website that responds to the end user's environment. So that's a basic definition, right? So what we're trying to do here is whatever the website you have, you want end user to have a seamless experience no matter which device he is using your website on. So why do we even need a responsive website, right? If you remember, 20 years back, we never had a responsive website concept, or we never had to support websites on mobile. What happened? Like 2000s, when the mobiles were just launched, all they could do was relay a text message. All you could do in your mobiles, in your Nokia 1110 mobile, is to check your message. But once BlackBerry came into picture, everyone could use websites on their mobiles, and then the IT industry thought, okay, let's support the websites on mobile too. And there came www.domain.com versus m.domain.com. Anyone remember using m.domain.com websites? So that was one phase where developers used to develop two different repos, one to support it on the bigger resolution, so as to say, and one to support on your mobile resolutions, right? So do we see any problem here? What's the big deal, right? Exactly. Thank you for saying that. Maintaining two websites, right? You need to make sure whatever website you're developing for your bigger resolutions is matching with what is being developed on your mobile resolution. You have two code bases to take care of, two different repos to take care of, right? So that is definitely a painful job for a developer. So they thought, okay, let's invent something that makes our life easier, right? And that's when they came up with the concept called responsive websites. So how does responsive website work? I mean, how did they make it work? So instead of looking at the website, the entire web page as a single layout, they started dividing it into flexible grids. So when you look at grids, right, so each grid can fit in content which is independent. So when you say flexible grid, obviously it requires a flexible media or flexible images also, right? So that's how they wanted to do it. What they said is we are just going to have one repo which will be supported across all the resolutions, right? So you are designing your development, the entire website to respond to the end user's system or environment. So when we talk about flexible grid layout, right? So if you see on the screen the image on the left side, so you see that, right? So the same layout here versus here versus here and versus here. So we are trying to support it across the resolutions, right? So that's basically the idea of responsive websites. So this is a small example. So that's how the flexible elements try to readjust based on your resolution. So many of you would have seen it already. I know it's a repetitive thing, but just giving a little bit of background on why responsive websites came into picture. Now going into the topic of testing the responsive websites, right? So yeah, developers' life was made easier. They just have one thing to build across all the screen resolutions and then just deploy it. Now the biggest challenge for the testers is to select the devices or select the sizes that they want to test on, right? You have various number of devices. Can you quickly show your mobile devices the room? Like, just quickly, just show. I'm not gonna grab them, so yeah. See, look at the resolutions with the people sitting beside you, right? Everyone has their own, everyone has a different resolution. And if you see in the market, every day there is a new device that's coming up with a newer resolution. Some smaller, some bigger, and everyone has their own taste. But your website have to and absolutely have to support all these resolutions. And you as a tester have to test your application on all these resolutions, right? Which is impossible if you talk about manual testing. So that's when, that's the biggest challenge in the responsive website testing. But there are things in which, there are things in this which we can use to make a better use or better strategize our testing. So the first thing is, these are the 4 elements that I usually practice to test an application that is built with RWD in mind. So the first and foremost thing is page should be readable in all resolutions, right? That's your first and foremost condition. And then you get the requirements from the business. Whatever content you get as important is the one that of prime concern for you as a tester. So when you're testing an application on different resolutions, do not go and delve deep into the application. Just quickly scan through and make sure whatever is important for the business is being rendered correctly on all the resolutions, right? And then the biggest thing is having the text controls and image element. So this is all the branding aspect of the websites, right? So these are also very important for certain businesses. So this falls into one more bucket. And the 4th one would be the input boxes, because these are really important, right? If you are using an iPhone, your text boxes would respond in one way. If it has a input, multiple inputs or a drop-down kind of one, it works different on Android versus iPhone. So these are all the 4 buckets that I would categorize to start with to start with testing a responsive website. When you go through all these 4 aspects of any website, you could be sure that your website is usable in all the resolutions. And there comes delving deep into trying the functionality and all of the website, right? So these are at a very broad level the 4 buckets. And the common challenges, the very most common challenges in testing the responsive websites are selecting the devices. So what devices do we test on mobile? Can anyone give me an answer on how would you get the test set? Like who is your point of contact to decide on the devices? I would rather go to my client and say, give me the analytics, like which devices are important to you, because we cannot practically test in all the devices, so give me that analytics. So I can divide my test to run on the devices that are most used. So selection of devices is really important thing. And the next one is change of requirements. This is something very familiar to someone working in Agile, right? Your website is constantly changing. The content on the page might alter the next week, and if you're writing a test or if you're making sure to test it on one particular requirement, that might change down the line and you need to rewrite all your tests. So this is one more common challenge. And the third most common challenge is manual testing possible in all the devices? The answer is No, not if you have a team of manual testers dedicated, but here I am talking in the way of an agile team where you have smaller teams owning up all the responsibilities. That becomes harder for QAs to do the manual testing too. So these are the challenges that we have faced in our team. And when we are trying to find an alternative, right? We sort of ended up with these list of tools that we found are sort of useful in one way or the other. So the first and most common one is the responsive web tester plugin for Chrome. If you have used, I can demo that plugin too, but this is something that's really easy and really available for your quick feedback. So it's nothing but a plugin on your Chrome browser. You can specify the resolution that you want to see your website on, and it will render the website on that resolution. Similarly, the Chrome developer tools have a viewport resizer, which is one more easier tool. If you are quickly testing your application on your developer machine, while you're doing the dev check, while your story is still in play, that's one thing that we regularly use. We make sure the developers demo that piece of functionality they have built using the developer tools on different resolutions and then say, okay, it's working fine, basically. And then the other one is Browser Stack and Apply Tools. These are other two tools which we have been talking about in Selenium Conf. I'm sure you must have been familiar with them. And the next one is Galen Framework. I'm going to delve deep into Galen Framework, so here I'm going to skip it. And there are a bunch of websites available online where you can just give the URL of your website and they would render your website on different resolution. That is also for a quick feedback on how your website is looking. And so is the Google Responsive Checker. That is also going to do the same job. So I'll quickly demo the Chrome plugin for you. So this is the Selenium Conf website, right? We said it's a responsive website. So responsive web design checker plugin is something like that. You see it on the top, right? So it comes as a plugin. It has a bunch of devices that are pre-populated. You could select any one of the device. Say I'm going to select iPhone 5 Portrait. And what it will do is it will open your browser on the size of an iPhone 5 and it's going to render the content and you can just get a very quick feedback from the plugin. So these are again the manual test tools for you to just look at the website while you're testing your story or while you're testing your application and get a quick feedback on. So there are a bunch of options that are available. Well, these are the manual testing options. I'm delving more into automation that too using Galen. Right, to the interesting aspect. So Galen Framework, right? So Galen is developed by Ivan Shubin. He is the prime contributor for the framework, and there are a bunch of 12 to 15 active contributors on Galen now. It's an open source framework, and it is built to have responsive websites, automation easier. It's built only for the layout testing in mind, and it uses Selenium in the background to sort of open the browser and interact with the elements. So that's very high level about Galen. And how does Galen work, right? So it has very simple usage. So what basically Galen does is you define a set of screen sizes that you are targeting. You declare them in your file and in your spec file, and say you define the layout of each and every element and say, okay, on my mobile device, my header image or my logo image should be on the top left. And that's how you define your spec file. It's very simple and easy, which I'll show you later. And then what Galen does is basically it opens the browser, resizes to the given resolution, and then it performs all the checks that you have given it to. That's how simple it is. It's very straightforward for anyone to start with Galen. And it can also be used with Selenium Grid, so you can run your tests on the grid as well. So let me talk to you in detail about the Galen spec file. So Galen spec file is nothing but it's kind of the layout definitions that you want to define. Like I said, if you want to declare a web element, say my logo should be on the top left corner, you would just give it in your spec file. It's as easy as I'm reading it. You're going to write it in a plain English language, very simple, very easily readable, and anyone can write this spec file. So the reason I want to stress this point that anyone can write this spec file is, because for me, when I tried it in my project, I let the BAs sometimes write the spec file, or the designers who would design the mockups for the website to write the spec files. So it's easy for them to sort of understand how to write the spec file and just give it to the testers. So we can take it forward from there. And it's readable, and it uses very minimal text. I'll show you the example in the next slide. So that's a brief about Galen spec file. Yeah, so this is how a spec file looks like. So let's take a minute. Let's look at it and try and understand what we're trying to do, right? I'll give you a minute, just read it and see what you can understand from it. And maybe if someone can try and explain, that will be great. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, we basically define the height of the page we want to change it when Galen executes.
Yeah.
Normally the one we want to test is 105 pixels.
Mm-hmm.
And automatically we change the width. And the other side we turn it to 55. So I don't know where is this spec file to make the comparison, but I think that this is...
Yeah. So you're almost correct, right? So what we're trying to do here is we have defined an object, and we said header, find it using CSS, and this is the CSS, right? We are familiar with finding elements using CSS. And then I said, this, maybe it's sort of a comment, right? You are declaring your header section. Let's make it a comment. And I said, on desktop, if you're on desktop, my header, which I have defined here, its width is 100% of the viewport. The header should be 100%, and its height is approximately 105 pixel, right? And if it's on mobile, the same header has width 100% of the viewport, but the height is just 55 pixel. I don't want my header to be 100 pixel, which would cover half of my screen. So this is simple, right? You understood how simply we can write the spec file. So this is just a basic example. I took a header and wrote for the header. I'll show you in the demo how you can write it for the multiple elements on a web page. So this is what I meant. It's easy to write, easy to read, and very brief way of letting the people know what you're trying to achieve on the UI. So like any other framework, Galen also comes with bunch of features and bunch of rules with it. For example, all the spec files would end with the extension .gspec, and we have to definitely define the objects using @object tag, and so on, @on, and these are a bunch of rules that come with the Galen language. And the biggest benefit of Galen spec language is you can write it as descriptive as you can. You can put as many comments as you can in a single line and make it as readable as, like if you like to add more comments and more paragraphs, you're free to do it. And if you like to keep it simple, you can do it like I did in the previous example. And not only height and width, right, which I have shown in the previous example, you could do a lot more using Galen. For example, instead of giving the exact position, you can also give a relative position. What do I mean by relative position is, header is always on the top of the page, right? Say if you have a banner, like we saw in the Selenium website, you could always say banner is always below the header. So you are giving a relative position, right, between the two objects. So that also you can do it. And you can also test the alignments of the element instead of giving just the position. Say all my speaker pictures should be left aligned, or top aligned, right aligned, bottom aligned. So this is the way you can define the alignments of the elements as well. You could also try testing the colors using the CSS properties of the elements. So Galen is very user-friendly or UI-friendly. So when I was explaining this tool to my team, they basically said, oh, you mean it's like a TDD tool for the UI developers. So that's how simple it is. You can test everything that you want to do on the UI. And you can also do the image comparison. Screenshot comparison is not something that I would admire, but one place where I would definitely depend on screenshot comparison is if it's a logo or if it's a static image that I know on the website is not going to change forever. That's when I would use an image comparison which is provided by Galen. So these are the features of Galen at a very high level. So I'm going to show a quick demo. You can also find the demo, which I'm going to display now in this GitHub URL for the demo. Yeah.
Looking at the spec files, most of this is defined in the CSS with media queries, right?
Yep.
Looking at the Galen spec files, most of this is defined in the CSS, say, with media queries or stuff like that. Isn't there a way potentially to use the CSS file as an input to generate these spec files rather than having to do it all manually?
Yeah, you can actually do it, but there's no way of converting the CSS entire property file into Galen expected file, right? So all you can do is you can copy all the CSS properties and you could define an object here and say, okay, this object must have CSS property as this below. So you could do that using Galen as well. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to quickly show the spec file, which is this. So if you see here, the website that I'm trying to test is this one. So if you see, this is the website. It has a header, a banner image, and a bunch of sections on the page, right? So let's see how the spec file looks like. On the spec file, what I did was I have declared a bunch of objects, the logo image, and the desktop navigation, which is nothing but the menu items here. And if it's in mobile, you would see a menu or a hamburger, this one. So that's the mobile menu. And there is the top section, which is this. And there's the content section, which is this. Very simple. I didn't want to make it complex, so I made it as simple as I can. So what I'm trying to do here is, if you see, we have a bunch of objects, and I said my menu section, menu bar, right? So here if you see, I said on my desktop and mobile, both places, my vodka image, the logo should be visible. See, if you see here, we're declaring it on two types of devices, both desktop and tablet. If you have, sorry, desktop and mobile. If you have tablet, you can also say, on my tablet too. And on mobile, the desktop navigation should be absent, and if it's the mobile menu should be visible, right? When you're on a mobile device, you can no longer see the desktop navigation. You can only see the mobile menu, and so is it on desktop. You can only see the desktop navigation, but not the mobile menu. And this navigation bar should be above the top section. This is what I meant to say, the relative positioning, right? Similarly, I have mentioned how the top content section should look like. So there are a bunch of validations that I've written. It's simple enough, right? You're able to read it and understand what's happening here. So now let's run this and see what happens. So this is the command. I know it's pretty lengthy, but let's try and understand what we are trying to do. We are saying Galen check, and we are going to give a file name, whatever the spec file that you have written, and we are declaring the URL, whichever URL that you are trying to give that URL, and declare the size, give the size of the size that you want to target, and include the tags, and generate reports in a particular directory. So this is just a rough sketch or the template. Yeah, so this is how it looks like. So I said Galen check, my spec file is vodka.gspec, and I've given the URL and the size that I'm targeting, and I said include whichever is tagged as desktop. So it will pick all the tests that are tagged as desktop, and is going to run those checks, and generate the HTML reports and put them in the reports directory. So let's run this and see. Yep. So it has opened the browser, has performed certain checks, right? You can see the log on here. So it verified for the menu bar, and it said, it's visible, the desktop navigation is visible, blah, blah, blah. It performed certain checks. And we also asked it to generate some reports, right? So let's take a look at the reports. So my reports are on report.html. So yeah, this is how the report is generated. Let's look into it. So it says there are a total of 6 tests which have passed, and it took 5 seconds for the test to run, and everything is green. So if I go in, so this is how it provides you the proper formatting of the report. So let's see. It verified menu bar, right? It has performed certain checks on menu bar, and let's see what happened. First check was on vodka image, and I click on this. That's the screenshot that you get. So it highlights the element, it searches for the element, highlights the element, and says whether it has passed the validation that you have provided or not. Similarly, on the mobile menu, I said something should be absent, and it couldn't find it anywhere on the page, so the test passed. Galen says, yeah, it is absent on the page, right? Let's try and make this test fail, right? I mean, why only pass? I would say my vodka image should be absent. I don't want it to be visible on the page. And let's run the same spec file and see what happens. Right. If you see here, it says, you asked vodka image to be absent on the page, but it's not actually absent. It's present on the page. And now let's see what the report has to say, right? So it says, there are a total of 6 tests and 5 passed and 1 failed. Let's look into the detailed report. So it says vodka image, you asked it to be absent, but it's not actually absent. So it says it's already present on the page. So that's how simply you can run a spec file. I know it's a really big command to run on a spec file, right? So you can also use something called Galen test file, which has the extension as .text, which looks something like this. So if you look at this, so the first line is like a description of your test. I said vodka page in a mobile resolution. And what have I done here? I gave it a URL. I said this is the URL. And now that you have the URL, this is the resolution that I'm targeting, which is 375 by 667. And I said check this spec file and include whatever is tagged as mobile. So instead of typing that entire big command, you could also use the test file to declare everything, and you can just run this single file, which will run on every resolution. Before, if you have seen, I could only run it on desktop, right? If I have to run it on mobile, I need to change the resolution in the entire command and give it again. Instead, I could use this single test file and run the test. So let's do that too. So now my command will be Galen test, and save the report in report folder. So now what this is going to do is run the test on both the resolutions, because I declared it to run both on mobile and desktop. So if you have seen the first time it opened the mobile resolution, now it's the desktop. So yeah, 2 tests failed because we wanted to make them fail, right? I said vodka image should be absent, but it's actually present. So this is how you run the test on multiple resolutions. So if you see the reports again, so this is how the reports are going to be generated. Vodka on mobile, vodka page on mobile resolution, vodka page on desktop resolution. And if you have more resolutions like that, you could name them and give them. And you could actually go into each of them and see what has failed and all. So that's how the reports are also generated. So I think we have already spoken about the error reporting, right, using HTML and JSON. So the other features which we have already covered is the screenshot capturing. Whenever a test fails or passes, you always have the screenshot which is taken by Galen for you to use it in the reporting. And you can also declare your warning levels. If you don't want certain checks to fail, you could declare them as your custom warnings so that your test is not failing, but you can see a warning message. And you can also define your custom error messages using Galen as well. You could throw your exceptions based on certain checks that you have done on your website. So that's about Galen, and I think we are right on time. Any questions? Yes.
Start here. I just want to know what your thoughts are on, obviously, Applitools Eyes is a means of testing from a visual perspective. Do you see Galen as as a competitor or something that can work in tandem?
It depends upon the end user, right? So ApplyTools is a nice tool. I have used it as well, but I used it like almost a year and a half back. Not recently, sorry, Adam. But I think if you are a person who would like to write lengthy code and you want to feel the energy of writing the code using ApplyTools, I would just suggest that. Galen is more for people. Like I said, it's a TDD for UI, right? It's very quick. You can write very quickly and use it instead of and the Galen installation is as easy as it can get. It has Node package. All you have to do is npm install and the Galen package, and you're done. You're set up. You need not do anything else. All you have to do is write a spec file and run it on your terminal. So that's how easy it is. So for me, ApplyTool versus Galen is never a question. It depends upon the end user. It depends upon the goal you're trying to achieve. Yeah.
I saw that you distinguish between mobile and desktop, but then you also specify the size of or the resolution.
Yeah.
So can they be like sometimes conflicting or redundant based on what you specify?
Yeah, it can be, right? So like I said, depends upon the requirement that you're getting from your client. Sometimes you might want to support multiple resolutions within the mobile resolutions. What you categorize as mobile could be different resolutions, right? Because your iPhone 5s has one size versus iPhone 6s, which has a different resolution. So it depends upon the business requirement. And that bucket of mobile could have multiple resolutions. And it's just a naming, right? You could change that naming convention in your spec file. And you could say, small mobile, medium mobile, larger mobiles, and then you can say small screen, medium screen, HD screen, or ultra HD screen. And that's all the naming convention that you have. Any more questions?
Okay. Well,
Cool. Thank you so much. As I promised, the answer for the puzzle is Guardians of Galaxy. If you don't understand, maybe catch me after the session. I'll explain you why they're called Guardians of Galaxy. Thank you.